Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stories of a Colorful World Authors Conversations. I am one of your hosts, Vanessa Mitchell, along with Kanika Mobley, and together we are the co-founders of Stories of a Colorful World. So if this is your first time joining us, we always like to take the opportunity just to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do. So we are an online children's bookstore, and we focus on carrying books that feature BIPOC characters or Black, Indigenous people of color, but also by the authors that represent those same diverse groups. And because diverse representation matters, we want to make sure that the voices of those characters are told from the perspectives of individuals from those same groups. So welcome, and if this is you're returning again to us, welcome. It's always nice to have you all. So today we have with us Keaira Faña-Ruiz. Uh,
Hi.
Keaira is the author of Black Boys Are, Black Girls Are, and the ABCs for the Afro-Latino Alphabet. So welcome, Keaira, and thank you for joining us today. And we're totally excited about our conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So we'll just jump right in. And Keaira, we'll just allow you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, hi everyone. My name is Keaira Faña-Ruiz, and I am the author of Black Girls Are and Black Boys Are, and the co-author with my husband of the Afro-Latino Alphabet for children. And I'm also an 8th grade teacher. I told my students I would give them a shout out. Hi guys.
So, how did you become an author? Actually, before we get to that, let's talk about the early years and who you are was as a reader. Did you love to read? Did you have some favorite books, favorite genres that you enjoyed reading?
So my love of reading is kind of like a strange story, but here we go. So I was an early reader as a child, but surprisingly, I'm also dyslexic. But I'm a dyslexic person who was an early reader and loved to read their whole lifetime. Excelled in the humanities courses such as, English ELA, literature classes, history classes. Not too well in the STEM area, but, but I'm working on it. Then eventually that love of reading just blossomed into me becoming an English major for my bachelor's degree. And here I am, the children's book author.
Nice. So, as an educator, like what was it that inspired you to kind of like take that leap and say, your first book, the Afro-Latino Alphabet, like what was it that inspired that creation?
Well, like I always tell people, it was just a rough day during quarantine because I'm the mother of 2 small children. I have a 4-year-old boy, Joey, and a 2-year-old girl, Amaya, Miss Amaya, I like to call her. And it was just a rough day. Like our house was just a total wreck. And my husband and I just got to talking about children's books and representation in children's books. And he was coming from the perspective of, well, I came here from the Dominican Republic at 10 years old, and there weren't really bilingual books for me to try to grasp the English language. And I wish that I would have had dual language books. And I was coming from the educator perspective of, yeah, there's dual language books and there's all these books for children of color, but you don't really hear too much about the Afro-Latino identity in early childhood books. So then we just, from that conversation, the following day, we started writing the Afro-Latino Alphabet. And I always say that the driving force for that book was for our children so that they could see themselves in the books that they read. It was just major in our household, but also for my students. Yes, they're in 8th grade, but I work in a dual language school with a lot of African American students, a lot of Latino students, and a lot of students who are in the mix in between. So I wanted them to be able to see themselves in the book as well. And it's been a blessing, a great journey.
And what was the reception from your kids on the book itself?
So funny you mentioned that. So my 2-year-old, she's all about her own little world. And it's like, oh, that book is nice. But
Of course, a 2-year-old.
my 4-year-old, he's like my little book agent, I like to call him. He's like promoting the book for me. And do you have my mom's book? He was just super excited and happy.
Nice.
I love that.
how has, you talked about like that, wanting that representation for, to shape like Afro-Latino students, and how has your Afro-Latino like heritage kind of shaped who you are or who you want to be as a writer?
Well, it wasn't until I would say teen years that I was made aware of that my paternal great grandfather was Puerto Rican. I grew up thinking I was African American and being proud of that fact. So I'm like, okay, now I have this whole trying to wrap my head around this whole Afro-Latino identity. Where do I fit in? Because I don't see anyone that looks like me on Univision or Telemundo. Like, how does that? And I didn't grow up necessarily speaking Spanish. I grew up listening to Spanish music, but I'm like, where do I, fit in? So I guess this book was also my own personal journey back to my own roots and acknowledging, because I know kids are going to ask questions about where are our ancestors from and, family history. So I'm happy that I'm able to answer some of those questions for my kids.
I love that. So then what led to Black Boys Are and Black Girls Are?
Well, Black Girls Are came first because, Black girls rock. It definitely came because towards the end of last summer, I was just being bombarded out of nowhere with all of these articles about African-American women just taking over all these job industries that we previously weren't acknowledged in, recognized, or even a part of. So I wanted to write this book to encourage little Black girls like myself and my daughter to you can go into whatever industry that you choose to. You can do whatever your heart desires. You can go after whatever educational level you want to go after. And I started just thinking about all these different jobs and occupations. So I wanted to put it in Black Girls Are. When it came to Black Boys Are, because face it, with everything that's going on with police brutality and the narrative of Black boys and Black men of being, violent or threatening, I wanted to change the narrative and change those adjectives. So I focus more in Black Boys Are on the essence of the Black boys and men in my life, their personality, that they're super talented, they're loving, they're, amazing leaders in the community. So I wanted to focus less on job opportunities with that book and more on who we are as a people. We're not threatening, we're just people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that.
Absolutely. So I wanted to take us back to the Afro-Latino Alphabet one more time, because I'm always in amazement of authors that write alphabet books, because I'm like, how do you narrow down, or how do you find something for this letter? So was there anything that you felt like, okay, I want to make sure that these specific concepts are included?
So the most challenging part of the Afro-Latino alphabet definitely had to be because we based it off of the Spanish alphabet. So that's, 30 letters, 30 characters. And there's no letter K in the Spanish alphabet. So we had those situations, or, with the double letters not always being at the very beginning of a word, but somewhere in that middle. So that came up. Initially, we were going to focus on different public figures and heroes within the Afro-Latino community, but sometimes your heroes can disappoint you. Mm-hmm. So hence why when we got to the letter H, we just said heroes throughout our history, so people can make up their own choice on who is their hero and what that word means to them.
That's very cool. So what was your journey just in becoming an author? So from the first book, how did you start the process?
Well, for me, it was just that following day after having that conversation with my husband, I called him on his lunch break, so, hey, remember that book that we were talking about? So I have letters A through J, but I'm stumped on K because there's no K in the Spanish alphabet. What are some of your thoughts? So it was just really collaborating with him on his lunch break one day and just, trying to get all the letters. And of course, there were revisions throughout the process. And then I'm like, okay, everything's typed up and ready to go. Now let's find an illustrator, which proved to kind of be difficult because we're talking about 30 illustrations to fit this Spanish alphabet. So it got kind of expensive. We did have to DoorDash that summer to pay for illustrations, but it was definitely worth it.
Nice. And it came out beautifully.
Thank you.
So just thinking about like our mission here and based on what you said, just in terms of like wanting to think about diverse representation and how do we make sure that our voices are out there and kids can actually see themselves in the books that they read. What does diverse representation in children's books mean to you?
It means to me not just having one Black character and thinking, oh, you're done.
Mhm.
Diversity is not just having one person and then that's it. Like actually focusing on Black stories and Latino stories and history and family and the culture is very important. And in regards to other cultures with language, the Afro-Latino Alphabet is a dual language book. It's written in Spanish and English on the same page. So I think really just talking to other parents and other educators, because there is definitely a want and a desire for diversity in books. I think the most beautiful thing that's come out of my personal journey as an author is that I've gotten to meet so many wonderful people with the same mindset as me when it comes to diversity. And now I'm finding out about all these books that I was not aware of. I don't see these books at our Scholastics book fair at the school, but now it's like I'm a part of this giant community, which I think is so dope and is just so awesome. So I think definitely being open to conversations and really just searching until you find those books is really important.
And what do you want the kids to, as they're reading your books, what do you want them to get out of the books themselves?
Aside from seeing themselves and their family and their friends and people in their community represented in a loving and accurate manner, I want them to have a love of reading.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, and I feel like I can say this as an educator, sometimes kids are turned off by the curriculum because they don't see themselves in the material.
That's a big deal, right? Just being able to visualize yourself in any situation on the pages that you're reading, right? You grow an attachment to the characters, to the stories.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes complete sense. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it starts young too. Like as an educator, seeing, kids who say like, I don't like reading, or I don't want to read. And,
Right.
Some thinking of it as a chore because they feel like in school, sometimes, that's the only time that they read and it's
Right.
like textbooks or something that's dictated to them versus like what they love. I know I work with some teachers, and when like the graphic novel craze, started coming, they're like, no, they need to read other things. If they love reading graphic novels, then give them a bunch of graphic novels, because anything that will get them excited and loving reading, give it to them. Don't try to take it away.
Exactly. Some of my 8th graders were surprised that we got to study a couple of graphic novels this year in my class. And I'm like, reading is reading, friends.
And the graphics tell a story too, right?
Exactly. Yes.
It's just another language of telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Do you and your family, so with your kids, do you guys have any like story time rituals?
We do. So we focus a lot on dual language books so that my mother-in-law, who still lives in the Dominican Republic, can be part of that whole family time. So we'll call her on FaceTime and we'll take turns reading in English and Spanish and going back and forth so that she can be included, and they really like it.
Oh, I love that.
That is fun. So I wanted to take you back a little bit just to your journey in becoming an author and challenges, right? Because we use this platform not just to highlight, authors that are currently out there publishing books, but for maybe any new authors or those that are thinking about the idea. So did you have any challenges throughout the process? Or what were your biggest challenges throughout the process?
I think the biggest challenge had to be finding an illustrator, because like I said, it was very expensive. We had to do DoorDash that summer, like delivering those orders to, make it happen. But for me, because we chose to self-publish, I didn't have to worry about trying to impress or convince a publishing house that this book is needed. I just kind of skipped over that part. I was like, I know this is important. I'm an educator. I know what I'm talking about. We're just going to do it ourselves. Let me watch all the little YouTube videos on how to upload a book on the Amazon, and let's just make it happen.
Absolutely. And I mean, that really is so important. Just like going back to you being able to, and your kids being able to share that experience with their grandmother. And I know here, I experienced like parents who would be self-conscious about actually reading, like in the same way, like the type of books that kids read, but also knowing like read to them in Spanish, like anything, especially for like the younger kids, like reading to them is reading to them. But knowing particularly for like parents that were raising like first generation US citizens, they wanted them to make sure that they learn English. Right. It's like, no, right. Have them read in their own language, you know, do all of those things. And so having that experience and having parents also feel comfortable is so, so important.
And starting them young because they absorb it all, you know. I wish I had learned another language when I was small, because then it becomes second nature.
Yes.
So that's good. So do you have any words of advice for up and coming authors, or those that might just have the idea kind of sitting in their head right now?
Just go for it. Just do it. Don't worry about if people are going to like it or not. And I think that's why this whole journey has been so fun for me, because I was like, well, at least I know my kids will be proud of me and I accomplished something. So don't necessarily stress yourself out worrying about the reviews or New York Times bestsellers list or any of that. Just if you think that this is what the world needs, and if this is what you want to, you know, add to the world, just do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love it. So are there any books that have been, you know, for little ones, sometimes they get into those phases of, I need to read the same books over and over again. So are there any on your like kids must-have lists that they're just like, okay, I need to hear this one again?
Right now, because you know it changes with small people. Absolutely. So right now it's the book of Dominican Was a Color. Oh yeah. Yes.
Nice.
How many times do they actually
Oh, I lost count. Yeah, I told you I'm not a STEM person. That's why I teach humanities. I lost count at this point.
So for you, is reading or writing a preference? Right? Do you lean one way or the other? Do you have a love for both?
I think I have a love for both. And I feel like I've always been like that since a kid. A love for both.
Okay. Nice. Are you reading anything good now?
Right now, I am finishing up Mariah Carey's memoir. Enjoying all the celebrity tea.
You need some good gossip in there too.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Good tea.
Yes.
Nice. So we just started June today, and our theme for June is kindness. And so do you have like a word or a quote or a phrase that represents kindness for you?
I think for me, it would definitely be choose happiness. Mm. Choose happiness, because when people are happy within themselves and their own lives, it becomes very easy to be kind to others and have compassion for others.
That was so simple, but so impactful, so impactful, especially in today's environment. We could all use a little bit more kindness.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So do you have any projects that are in the works?
I do. So this month, since it is the month of June, hooray, we have our next dual language book coming out, Counting with Che, which I'm very excited about. So at my school, the first grade class, they were studying Black stories and Black authors, and they asked me to come in and read Black Girls Are, which I did. And they're like my little fan club. I love those little people so much. At that time they had all of my books, and they were asking me so many questions about Black Girls Are and the different job occupations that I highlighted in the book. But then also the conversation switched back over to the Afro-Latino alphabet, because like I said, I work at a dual language school. And, you know, a lot of the kids loved that it was a dual language book, because one little girl told me she got to read it at home in Spanish with her mom, because her mom only speaks Spanish, but then she got to read it in English at school with her friends. So she was able to share in those two different environments. And then one little boy, he was so adorable, and I probably owe him a check later. he asked me, well, since you wrote a book in Spanish about the Spanish alphabet, can you do one with numbers? And I'm like, you might be on to something, and I might owe you some money later. But I'm a humanities teacher. I don't do STEM, so let me think about it. So I went home and I gave my husband all the feedback, and I was like, so how can we work the Spanish numbers into a book? And then I was like, well, we always said that we wanted to tell your childhood story of you growing up on a farm in the Dominican Republic. Why don't we set it on a farm? Because, you know, small children love animals, but incorporate the number somehow. So that's how Counting with Che was born. So I'm really excited for that release.
Oh, we're excited too. That sounds cool. So you have your built-in fan club, your built-in feedback, like everything. And young kids are very honest. So
they are.
They will definitely give you the feedback.
They do. They're amazing. I didn't want to leave them that day. I'm like, now I got to go upstairs with the kids.
Absolutely. God bless you for the middle schoolers.
Yes.
But it is so, if people want to stay in contact with you, where can they go and how can they continue to learn more about what you have in store?
So I'm definitely the most active on Instagram. So the Afro-Latino Alphabet on Instagram. And that's where I mostly post everything, all my book surprises and release dates and links to, you know, everything from interviews that I've had to do in Spanish. That was fun. And everything else.
I love it.
Yeah, this has been really fun. And one of the things that we've been trying to do as Keaira and I and the world has been opening up, let me say that first, but we've been trying to do more and more events, in-person events. And so we want to make sure that your books are ones that we carry as well. Because I think it's important, you know, we come in all shades, we come from all backgrounds, and you don't see a lot of books around the Afro-Latina heritage. And so I think that's an important genre and scope to highlight, and to put out there. And the ability to learn a dual language, learning your numbers, and, you know, we're learning Spanish as young kids, certainly be a help to them. But from the perspective of an own voice, which is something that we try to highlight within this series. So we're excited to be carrying your books.
Thank you, and I'm honored. Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us today. We will make sure that we link your information in the comments below to make sure that people can stay in touch with you. And so they will be on the lookout for Counting with Che, and will be able to pick up your books. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So we thank you everyone for joining us today. And before we go, we just want to let you know that Vanessa and I will be together in a couple of weeks, first time since the pandemic, at the Juneteenth Parade and Music Fest in Atlanta. So June 18th through the 20th in Centennial Park. So it is 3 big days and 2 big stages. So there are plenty of events. There'll be plenty of vendors. So come celebrate with us. Come in. Buy from local vendors. And again, that is June 18th through the 20th in honor of Juneteenth. So Juneteenth Parade and Music Fest in Atlanta at Centennial Park. All right, I will see you guys next week. Bye.